is always going to be a concept application question. What does that mean? It means you're going to get a scenario and you're going to explain a person's behavior or apply theories and concepts to the scenario. And those concepts, those terms are going to can come from any unit of the whole year. So the concepts in this question can come from any unit. So you might have a term about sleep, you might have one about psychological disorders, one about, memory, and one about biology. So you could have anything. It is up for grabs. Question 2, however, is always, always, always about research methods. So guess what? You already know, what's going to be on the exam. This is the one thing that you already know for sure is going to be on that test. So if you haven't, you need to start every so often going back to that research methods unit and those terms, unit 2, I believe, or unit 1, and review that. So for this one, you're almost always going to get some kind of a research study that they'll describe to you. It's never a real one. It's always a made up one. And they're going to ask you to analyze it in some way. So they might say, find an ethical problem with the way this experiment was set up, or what's wrong with the experiment that makes it invalid or unreliable. So that's things like random sampling needs to be there, random assignment needs to be there, sample size. And they also often will have you do some kind of interpretation of data, of numbers, so statistics. Not a lot of calculating, so don't panic. The most they would ever have you calculate is probably going to be mean, median, or mode. No standard deviation, nothing crazy. But they might give you a standard deviation number and ask you to explain what it means, or a correlation coefficient. So let's break these down even more. So let's say we look at the concept application question. Okay, you get a scenario and you apply terms to it. You will always get 7 terms to apply to the scenario. Remember, there will always be at least 1 or 2 that you won't remember on exam day, either that you just forgot or that you didn't study at all. And it could be that we didn't cover it at all, because that happens once in a blue moon, because psychology is such a huge topic that there are things that sometimes they pick something super specific that we just didn't talk about. And even if you miss a couple, you can still get a 5 on the AP test. So concept applications usually look something like this. So you'll have a brief scenario and then you have your terms. And if you look, so extrinsic motivation, that's going to be from our unit coming up, we haven't done. Punishment, that's from the learning unit. Proactive interference, that's from the memory unit. Endorphins, biology unit. Vestibular system biology again. Divergent thinking is going to be after this semester for the rest of this unit. And then introversion is going to be a later unit. So it's from the whole year. And then if we look at our research methods FRQ, you get a description of a study and you will have terms and or tests. So it won't just be terms like the concept application one. There will be some, but there will also be tests. So it'll tell you something that you need to do. It's very likely that the research methods question will include some kind of data interpretation. So it might give you a chart or a graph that you have to analyze, like in our test yesterday, or a number that you have to interpret. And it is very likely that they're going to ask you to find design flaws in the experiment. So that just means ways that it was designed incorrectly. So we are, especially second semester, we're really going to hit this hard. We're going to practice the research methods FRQ a lot. But it wouldn't hurt for you to kind of maybe start going back and refreshing your memory on the terminology from that unit. So this is what research methods FRQ might look like. So notice this is the first section. It's got part A. It has a B and a C. So part A, it gives you a graph. It tells you just a little bit about the scenario, the study, and then it gives you tasks. So for example, it might say, what's the most appropriate conclusion that can be drawn based on the figure above? Explain how the data in the graph is consistent with the exhaustion stage of general adaptations. Okay, so those are tasks. And on the next slide, you see the terms. So the research methods FRQ question is a big one. All right, so now let's talk about the basic formula for our FRQs. So the basic formula that we've been using, and this is mainly for the terms and concepts, not as much the tasks, is we're going to define the term and then apply it. Definitions alone, remember, don't score, but it's helpful because it helps you to focus. And if your application is a little iffy, it can be what saves it. So definitions aren't required for the AP test, but they're required for Miss Turner. Capiche? It's a best practice, as we would say in the teaching world. And then the application, though, it's non-negotiable. It is essential for scoring your point, because you can have a great definition, but if you don't apply the term back to the scenario, you won't get a point. So you must apply it. So let's talk about Tosnia, right? So this is a shortened FRQ. We got 3 bullet points here. So Tosnia feels like she encodes material well, but she still forgets the material on test day. Explain how her forgetting might be related to problems with each of the following. And our terms are storage, retrieval, and retroactive interference. So our first term is storage. We're going to go to the top line, so do this with me. And just write storage like you're about to start a sentence with the word storage. Do not underline, do not put a dash, don't put a colon, don't put a bullet point, because it's not a list, it is a paragraph. Now we're going to skip about 1/3 of the way down the page and write our second term. What's our second term, Ava? Retrieval. Same thing, just write the word. Skip down a little ways further. All right, Camilla, what's our last word? Retroactive interference. So now we've set up our paper, and why would we do that first? Here's why. Because we still want to follow order it. We still want to do it in the right order, but maybe you studied really hard the difference between retroactive and proactive interference, and you feel confident on this one, but you can't remember what retrieval means. So you want to start here, but you don't want to break rule number 2 of FRQ writing. So you can still do that. Now we can jump around if we need to. We need to write the first one because we have an idea of what we want to say. So we can say, first we want to define, right? We want to do step 3. So if we're going to define, how can we define storage?
Is storage like the,
go ahead.
Is it like the process of establishing a memory?
And what do you mean by establishing? Because we want to differentiate it from encoding.
Encoding.
Oh, good synonym. Okay, so Leslie has a good synonym. He said containing. So we could say storage refers to the containment of information in memory, right? We could leave it at that. Pretty simple definition. And now what do we need to do? What's our next step?
Apply the definition.
We've got to apply it back to Tosnia, and specifically the prompt says how the fact that she forgets the material on test day could relate to a problem with storage. So, and we said we want to talk about decay. So like Ahmad was saying, we could say, if Tosnia does not rehearse or practice the information, Or you could say, or use the information. I'm going to say, it will decay over time. And then I want to add one more sentence just to solidify my connection back to the prompt, right? So I said it could decay, and then I have to say, how does that relate to test day? So I could say, this explains why she cannot remember the material on test day. All right, so that's our first bullet point. And if we were to highlight and differentiate here our parts, so let's say that orange is the definition and pink is the application. So our first sentence is going to be our definition. And then the rest is the application. And notice, I am not writing like I talk to my friends, right? I'm using academic language because this is an AP college level course. It is considered scientific writing. So someone last period said, so I can't say that an experiment was sus. No. And part of that, practically speaking, first off, yes, we need to practice academic writing, and it's an academic course. But also, think about this. Your readers, the people grading these, some of them are young like Miss Turner and might know what sus means or whatever slang you want to throw in there. But some of them are 60 and they won't get it. So you need to be formal in the way that you write your response here. And the more academic, scientific language you can use, the better, as long as you do it correctly, right?